It was supposed to be a friendly panel. That's what the event organizer kept repeating in the emails. Just a discussion on education, lived experience, and representation in lawmaking. But Jasmine Crockett had been in politics long enough to know what those words really meant. It meant the real conversation would never be on the flyer. And it wasn't. It started when Senator Elizabeth Warren leaned forward, smiling at the moderator, and said the line that changed the room. Well, I suppose we all took different routes to the law. Some of us studied it. Some of us survived it. The audience laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was clear who she was talking about. And Jasmine Crockett didn't even blink. She'd heard it before. The little jabs. The backhanded compliments. The subtle reminders that not all law degrees are considered equal. Warren didn't need to say Jasmine's name. She didn't need to mention the HBCU. Everyone understood the implication. But what Elizabeth Warren didn't understand, not yet, was who she had just challenged. When Jasmine Crockett spoke, her voice was low and controlled. She didn't raise it. She didn't need to. Some of us, Jasmine said, earned our law degrees while working full-time. Some of us didn't get scholarships or tenure-track positions. We got late nights, public defender budgets, and clients whose names no one remembered except us. The laughter stopped. The moderator looked down at her notes, suddenly unsure what came next. But Jasmine wasn't done. "You can mock the way I got here," she said, turning slightly toward Warren without ever naming her. "But don't confuse your classroom with my courtroom." Someone in the third row nodded. Then another, because something had shifted. And for the first time in that room, the audience wasn't looking at Elizabeth Warren. They were watching Jasmine Crockett. Warren sat back in her chair. She didn't smile again, because this wasn't just a clapback. This was something else. This was a warning, delivered with surgical calm. Jasmine adjusted the microphone slightly. "No one gave me credibility. I earned it every time a judge looked at me and assumed I didn't belong." Her voice never wavered. "Not once. I earned it every time I walked into a courtroom without the right last name or the right network. Every time I won a case that no one expected me to win." There was no sound in the room now. No whispering. No awkward laughter. Only the sound of someone realizing too late that they had picked the wrong opponent. "I'm not here because the system made space for me," Jasmine said. "I'm here because I took it." The moderator cleared her throat. "We're going to move on." But everyone knew the panel was already over. Warren didn't speak again. Not for the rest of the hour. Not even to close. Because there are moments when silence says more than any defense ever could. And Jasmine Crockett had just delivered one of those moments. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She just told the truth in a room that didn't expect to hear it. And when she stood to leave, the audience didn't clap because they were supposed to. They clapped because they had just seen someone take control of a room that was never built for her. And make it hers anyway. The panel was over. But the moment wasn't. By the next morning, a short clip had already made its way on his social media. Jasmine Crockett, seated in a navy blazer, calmly telling a packed auditorium, "Don't confuse your classroom with my courtroom." That was the sentence that lit the match. The video had no hashtags, no fancy captions, no edits. But by 9 a.m., it was everywhere. Because the internet didn't need context. They recognized the tone. They recognized the moment when a rising leader decided she wasn't going to play polite while being undermined in public. And they recognized what Elizabeth Warren had tried to do. It wasn't just the words. It was the smirk, the glance toward the moderator, the way she had expected the audience to laugh with her. And for a second, they did. Until Jasmine spoke. And then everything changed. By noon, headlines were already circulating. Crockett checks Warren on live panel. "Don't confuse your classroom with my courtroom" goes viral. HBCU grad silences senator with one sentence. The backlash hit fast. Some tried to defend Warren. They called it a misunderstanding. They said it was humor taken out of context. They claimed she was praising perseverance. But the damage was already done. Because no one needed a transcript to know what they saw. They saw someone with Ivy League polish punch down, and someone with real-world scars punch back with truth. And truth always leaves a mark. That afternoon, Jasmine returned to work like nothing had happened. She walked into a policy meeting with a notepad and 3 case files. She didn't mention the clip. She didn't mention the headlines. But her staff noticed something different. The calls were coming faster now. Constituents, reporters, fellow lawmakers. Not for gossip. For guidance. For the first time, people were asking Jasmine what she thought about education equity. They wanted her to lead the conversation. Because the moment she had been mocked for her background was the moment she proved exactly why it mattered. That evening, a producer from a major network called her office asking for a follow-up interview. She declined, not because she was afraid to speak, but because she already had, and she knew the power of leaving some things right where they landed. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Warren's team was scrambling. They drafted a statement, then rewrote it. They considered reaching out to Jasmine directly, but decided not to, because no apology would land without sounding calculated. No clarification would undo the smirk caught on camera, and no press release would change the fact that this time, the applause went to someone else. Inside the Capitol, Jasmine received quiet nods from members who had never spoken to her before. Not all of them were supporters, but all of them understood what had happened. They had seen one of the hardest things to watch in politics. A seasoned leader lose control of the room to someone younger, sharper, and far less willing to swallow disrespect. And they had seen Jasmine do it without raising her voice, without name-calling, without asking for the moment. She had taken it anyway, because it belonged to her. And the audience, the one that really mattered, knew it. 3 weeks passed. The headlines faded. The clip stopped trending. But something had changed, and everyone who worked on Capitol Hill could feel it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. But it was there in the way people started listening when Jasmine Crockett entered a room. Not with curiosity. With caution. Not because she had become a threat. Because she had become undeniable. One morning, during a committee session on education funding, Jasmine took her seat near the end of the panel table. She opened her notes. She waited for her turn. Across the aisle sat members who had been in that university forum. Some had laughed that day. Others had stayed silent. Now, none of them interrupted. And when Jasmine spoke, the room stayed still. Too often, she said, we measure a person's qualification by the polish of their resume instead of the weight of their lived experience. But the families I represent aren't asking where I studied. They're asking if I understand what it means to be dismissed. No one challenged her. Not because they agreed, but because they had already seen what happened when they underestimated her once. And they would not make that mistake again. Back in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren had kept a low profile. She hadn't referenced the panel. She hadn't mentioned Jasmine Crockett's name. But a quiet acknowledgement came in the most unexpected place. In a speech on educational access given to a private audience of donors, Warren changed one of her talking points. She spoke of the value of non-traditional paths, of resilience, of the importance of recognizing different forms of brilliance that don't always come with accolades. She didn't credit Jasmine by name, but everyone who knew the story knew who had written that shift. And that was enough. Because Jasmine wasn't asking for recognition. She never was. The people who mattered most had already given it to her. Not with tweets, not with headlines, but with trust. Weeks after the clip had gone viral, a young woman stopped Jasmine outside her district office. She couldn't have been older than 19. She wore a backpack, and her voice shook a little. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. You made me feel like maybe I don't have to change who I am to be good enough. Jasmine nodded. She didn't give a speech. She didn't need to. She just said, you don't. And that was it. That was the win. Not the silence in the room that day. Not the shift in power. Not even the headlines. It was that one quiet moment where a young woman realized that dignity could look like her, too. And that maybe, for the first time, she didn't need permission to speak. She just needed the example. And Jasmine Crockett had already given it. All without raising her voice. All without stepping out of character. Just by refusing to sit down when someone tried to push her out of frame. The audience never forgot. And neither did the person who made the mistake of thinking a degree defined a woman like that. Because some moments end careers. But others start something even stronger. A shift. A legacy. A standard. And this one had already begun.